It is 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our clerk is out with a medical issue, so she is excused, but in her absence, we need someone that's willing to play the role of secretary or clerk for the meeting.
I nominate Trustee Thering.
Support.
Trustee Theron, you good with that?
Yeah.
Any other nominations? Seeing none, we have a motion to appoint Trustee Theron as the temporary clerk for this evening. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Trustee Theron. Would you do a roll call of the board, please? And I'll just note that I did get a message from our treasurer that she'll be here soon.
Okay. Supervisor Milky,
Here.
Treasurer Rice is on her way. Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Bills.
Here.
Trustee Brown.
Here.
Trustee Thering, here. And Clerk Cody is excused.
Thank you, trustee / clerk Theron. We have an agenda tonight. I'd be happy to entertain any motions regarding that agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion by Bill, support by Smith. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion to approve the agenda passes unanimously. Presentations. We have a couple elected officials with us tonight. Sheriff Bain, you look like you're ready, so if
Go
you...
ahead, Sheriff. Commissioner Engler said, I've already heard you speak, so he doesn't want to hear me again. So I just said, well, just go outside, hang out in the warm weather. Good evening. Making my rounds to all the townships, giving the recap of the Sheriff's Office for 2023. Mr. Supervisor, if I may approach.
Absolutely.
6,047 calls. There are two different formats of calls in here. We're in the process of changing our records management and CAD systems. We've integrated those. Not as smooth as we would have liked it, but we're making good progress onto it, so we kind of had to add the two together. 2024 will have a full year on that system, so it'll be a little more accurate and on one platform. So, staffing. I always start off with that because it's always so fun, right? So, in 2023, we were short some deputies. We were able to build those up a little bit. We were really short in corrections. We were able to build them up. We were doing pretty good. And of course, we have all these financial issues impacting us. So we had one opening in our road patrol. So we were not filling that because we didn't know what was going to happen here yet. We still don't, obviously. But about 2 weeks ago, in a blink of an eye, retirement. A young lad that we took from Gratiot, super good cop, hard worker. Been with us about a year and a half. Wanted to go back home, but the uncertainty of what's going on, they topped him out in his home county. He said, thanks for the experiences. Good kid, we're going to miss him. And then we had one that we put on the road from the correction side. Wasn't really able to do the road patrol side, so we put him back into corrections. So within a blink of an eye, we're 4 short, so now we're shuffling around trying to keep the shifts full. We have worked diligently in the corrections to build them back up. We are down to 1 spot in corrections. That is very helpful. Unfortunately, here a few weeks ago, we had one that had a minor CVA or stroke on duty. We had one with a heart issue. We had one get into an accident. We got 2 on, one on workers' comp, one on sick leave for something else, and then a maternity. You're like, never ending, right? So
Yeah.
Trying to keep them spots filled has been a challenge, and our deputies have been filling in on that as well because we just needed more help. So they come into the jail and help. So that does help us a little bit. We had 18,128 incidents. That's about 2 an hour again per year. 39% were criminal, 10% non-criminal, and 51% were traffic. We did 1,238 traffic stops. We had 720 car deer accidents, which was a little bit more than the previous year. We had 168 personal injury accidents with 5 fatalities. That was actually down 3, which is good, but 5 is not good. So we're trending in the right direction, but we'd like to lower that if we could even more. We had 235 mental health calls, 576 domestic assault calls, We drove 316,420 miles. We did 187 transports. Our busiest month was November, and our slowest month was in July. We had over 500 arrests just for the sheriff's office alone, and we did just shy of 400 Freedom of Information Act requests. One of the things with FOIA requests right now that we're seeing is kind of interesting. We have this company called Video, and they have a generic FOIA request, and all the police agencies have seemed to be getting these. I think they're probably doing it across the country, but I call it FOIA for profit. So they are looking for drunk drivers and disorderly type people, and they submit that, and they want the first 2 officers' body cam video. They're not even really interested in the police reports, and they put them up on YouTube, and they're making money off of them. So I did have some conversations with our senator and rep. I'm like, this is going to become a thing, right? It's a FOIA for profit, and I don't know if legislatively we can ever do anything with that, but I know my FOIA coordinator right now has 17 of them, and this is 3 videos from the car, 2 body cams, so there's just a ton, and we have to redact any radio traffic out of it, any criminal justice information stuff or private stuff, so it's just very time consuming, and it's really started to create some issues in-house. So Marine unit, because we had some staffing, we were able to get our numbers up because they were a little low in 2022. We did 116.5 hours on the waterways, 125 inspections, and 18 warnings. The jail had just shy of 2,000 inmates again for the year. Our daily pop has been about 140 or so. That's with about 8 to 10 feds right now. We kind of wanted some more federal inmates. We do make some revenue on that, but the federal dockets have caught up, and they're doing kind of the same thing the state does. They don't keep them, they're just letting them right back out pretty quick. So we're still hoping maybe that'll turn around on us a little bit for some revenue. We did 166,821 meals. 104 inmates enrolled in our school program, which is a partnership we have with the Mount Pleasant Schools. It's been a partnership for a long time. Our new facility has their own school again in it. We want to keep that partnership. If an inmate comes in, they want to do school education right up to their general diploma, they'll start them, and then if they leave the jail and they want to come back, or they end up coming back for 6 months later, they'll pick them right back up where they left off. We had 10 people graduate with their diplomas out of the jail this year, or last year. It's not a lot, but it's 10 more people that have a diploma to be able to do something else, maybe productive in life. So small wins, but big wins for them. Our health risk appraisals and sick calls to our nurse was 6,351. We had 13 transports to the emergency department out of all of those incidents, and we had 107 on suicide watch. We received over $600,000 in grants for canine stuff, Marine, secondary road patrol. We have it's called Core Track. It helps track inmates. It'll be very helpful in our new facility. It was like a $23,000 program that offset about $150,000 need in the new jail. So we were pretty happy with that. And it ties into our records management system for the jail. DNR, tribal grants, Homeland Security grants, all those things added up to that amount. Our animal control officer, who's been under us now for about a year and a half, did 1,110 complaints, including 96 dog bites. That's one person. Every morning when I come in and I log in, when I'm backing out of my garage, I log in, he's got 3 or 4 complaints holding already, so animal control is always busy. We provided 3,836 hours of training to staff. Just a couple of updates, what we've been working on, the radio tower project. We're getting close, they tell me. I think we're going to do testing in September, and if it works the way we think it's going to work, we should be getting it turned on really quick. So I know they had something they plugged into a widget or a gadget, and it burned the widget or gadget out. So I replaced that, and they plugged it back in, and it burned it out again. So obviously the other widget and gadget, so now they're doing some maneuvering. So we are excited about that. If that comes online and we are good to go with the testing, we are prepared to do immediate testing with the law enforcement. I mean, they'll do their own testing, Motorola will do their own testing, the state will do their own testing, but we want to take our radios out, we want to push them and see if they work in the hospitals, in the box stores, in the casinos, and those places. And if that is working the way they tell us it's going to work, we will immediately move to phase 3 which phase 2 would be if we had to put any BDAs or bidirectional antennas on. Phase 3 would be starting to replace the radios, portables and mobiles for all law enforcement, and then we'll shuffle them old ones down to the fire service. So we are getting close. I cannot wait for that project to be done as well. Our construction update, as of yesterday, we were at 87%. We are right there. They were going to give us the keys, I think, December, but we've had a little hiccup with one piece of the puzzle, and it's going to push us back 2 or 3 weeks. So we're definitely looking January, which is kind of when we were going to move anyways. We weren't going to do it over the holidays, but so we are moving along well. Some of you did take a tour, and we sort of can offer more tours up as we get closer or whenever you want. Every time I go in there, it changes drastically. I mean, there's the fine tuning's coming into it, and it was really busy a little while ago because it was like a puzzle coming together, and all the pieces, some of them didn't fit, so we had to maneuver some things. But the last few weeks it's been a little more quiet. I should knock on wood saying that dumb word, but we're getting really close, so that's exciting. I cannot wait to have a year that we're not working on this project. I've been working on it since for 8 years, and I'm tapped out, and I'm ready to be done with it. So I mentioned the RMS, Records Management System, and the CAD system. We integrated those about a year and a half ago. Did not come without challenges, which it always does, but the company we selected, we meet every 2 weeks. We've been meeting for a year. They have been phenomenal about fixing, changing, putting things together, making it fit. So I think at the end of the day, we're going to have a really good product there. The only thing I really have left, obviously, is the deputy conversation. The commissioners were able to extend the deputies out from October to December 31st. We're appreciative of that. That gives us a Hail Mary attempt in November. We do have ballot language on the November ballot for 1.45 mils, which is way under what the 2.5 originally was. It's no one wants that, right? No one wants to pay more. No one wants to have that attached. But at the same time, to keep our community safe, to do what we need to do, it is imperative that everybody become very familiar and very educated on what can and may happen here to our community when those deputies, there's 22 of them that will leave. And there's people out there that will definitely appreciate probably 22 less police officers, but we don't want those people being in charge. That millage is only for the deputies, and when I say that, that is not for the sheriff, that is not for the undersheriff, that is not for the records clerks. It's for the 2 detectives, the 4 sergeants, and the deputies that patrol the roads. So that money can only be used for that select group of people, which is very important, and we heard that very loud and clear through the last year, that they wanted something very specific, and that's what that is. It keeps our status quo. We're still operating at the same level that we would be today, past November or past December. I think that is it. Questions, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't able to make the tour of the facility. How can we get that done, Sheriff?
Well, we're taking tickets. No, I'm just kidding. You absolutely just reach out to me. We actually do a tour every 2 weeks. We do a meeting, and we've been kind of tagging people into some of those tours, some of the community and municipality groups and stuff. So absolutely, if anybody wants to go, if that doesn't work for you, we find a time. We'll find a time. We can do it after hours. We can do it whenever. So absolutely, just reach out to me.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trustee Bills, it's an impressive tour.
Oh, wow, bet it is.
Clerk Cody and Trustee Smith and I went with some of the staff. I'd love to see it again as you get closer, just
Yep.
Yeah.
because there was still a lot of work
We
in
can help
progress.
you move some boxes in January.
Well, we're going to be looking for movers.
Yeah, so there you go. See?
And
I can tell you that we're not taking a lot with us because there's not much to take. But and and it's so embarrassing. You have a meeting in our old facility, and some of the chairs are just ratty and they're torped. But we didn't want to replace anything, right? We didn't want to spend money on that stuff. So it's just taken a long time, and things are really starting to deteriorate. So we are excited about some new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But
and for the record, I don't want to see it come mid-January ever again.
no.
So-
Yeah,
I did have one question for you, though, and this has actually come from a couple of residents that have asked me about it. They noticed the new antennas.
at the dispatch center.
Yes.
Yes.
And have asked, so now there's going to be 2 antennas up there? And
So-
my response has been, I think that the intent is to ultimately bring that down if they're able to, and that's the plan. Is that an accurate statement?
So it's a 195-foot monopole. And I've learned so much with this project. You know, you've got tall tower structures and the FAA and all those things come into the FCC. There are two Nicoya dishes that they call them on there, and actually one will be pointing to Tower 1403, I believe, which is just inside of Midland County by Shepherd, and 6303 is our current tower that's out here. So what that's going to do is that's going to create a loop. So if one of those legs goes down, we still have those communications. So there actually will be two, and they're just pointing kind of different spots to connect those microwaves to that Nicoya dish. So if
Basically,
yeah.
redundancy. It does. It helps a lot.
Redundancy,
Yeah.
yeah. So like if 6303 goes down, we still have this connection going. If theirs goes down, we're still feeding. Like, so it really does bolster our public safety, EMS, fire, police, communications tenfold in this community. So that's our hope. So
That makes sense. Any other questions? I have one for the board. Would you like to have this copied so you have a
Yes,
copy
please.
of it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I got a pretty short paper budget, so sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you very much, Sheriff.
Thank
Mann.
you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Engler?
Sure. I won't take too long. I know you guys got looks like you got a few people here. So, we had first reading of the budget, and it's one of the few times that the first read, the second reading is probably going to be a little bit different than the first reading because we're down to a very small amount of money, and we're still making some hard decisions. So, maybe about 250,000, or that's going to be split up with the remaining. So, like the sheriff said, we put some Band-Aids on a few things. Eventually those Band-Aids are going to have to be ripped off and do it, but I think we're going forward. Looks like we're going to be balanced for the next couple of years, so we don't run into any more unexpected stuff. So we're getting there. It's just been kind of tough. It's hard to lay people off, hard to go forward. So I will take questions. I know Mr. Smith there covers our meetings. We didn't have a lot last time, but some reports. But I'll take questions. I know you got a long meeting.
I know,
Yes.
I know you were gonna issue that bond for the new building repairs.
Yeah,
That-
we started the process to go through it yet. We haven't
Oh.
really got it yet. So
Has there been any change in the budget for that yet, as far as, the asbestos removal and all that?
well, we've actually getting very close. The department has given us what they wanted for requirements, and of course there's some issues there going on, and some people think they need a little more space, and you can't put the prosecutors up next to they got to be on a different floor than some of the yeah. So some of the other people, so we're getting some
They
of that
can't
through
play
there.
in the same room?
Well, if you noticed before, there was a lot of room on some of the offices, and it's just like the
Yeah.
clerk and the Register of
yeah.
Deeds. I said eventually we're looking into combining them, so we're kind of putting that in there. So Spicer's, I believe, is the one that's doing the going on there. But we're definitely not going to go to the third floor, so
Excellent.
at this time, because hopefully we can rent it out or do something different with it, or we'll probably use it for storage for a little bit.
Great.
So that's where that's at. So, any more questions? I'll take off my commissioner's hat, and I won't come up later and remind you the Conservation District, September 7th at the fairgrounds, going to has the household hazardous waste program, and then the tire recycling will be the 28th. So, and they're always until noon at the fairgrounds. So.
And on the 7th, is that including electronics?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes,
Thank you.
we've combined them. There'll be two separate lines, but once you pull in, you'll go one way for electronic and one way for hazardous waste.
Thank you.
And then I'll take that hat off, put another hat on, and don't forget Sunday, if you're not busy, there's a chicken barbecue going out at Beale City for the KC. So.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Thompson. I am a resident of Isabella County. I am a firefighter, a medical first responder, an EMT, a medical examiner investigator, and fire investigator, all in Isabella County. I'm here tonight as a representative of backing our deputies, Isabella County, a citizen-led committee that is advocating for the deputies, and ultimately the safety and security of our community. Something to consider outside of all the obvious reasons why the road deputies are a necessary part of our community are that deputies secure scenes for medical professionals. When I'm dispatched to an accidental shooting, domestic violence injury, drug overdose call, something like this, we are required to stage, meaning be in the area of the call but not enter the scene. We have to wait until police have cleared the scene and have deemed it safe to enter. Losing our road deputies will cause a delay in response time by police, which would then delay medical care. Minutes count when it comes to medicine. As a medical examiner investigator, we are in situations where we have to investigate homicides, drug overdoses, and potentially dangerous death scenes. Many of these calls are handled by the Sheriff's Department's road deputies. They are there to keep us safe and the scene secured. Sometimes these scenes become intense and potentially dangerous. Family and friends of people who have passed away have gotten violent in their anger and grief. The deputies on scene keep us safe. The potential loss of upwards of 22 sworn law enforcement officers who promptly and faithfully respond to these types of calls will be felt much farther than the boundaries of our county. 911 calls will still be answered and MSP will be dispatched, but we could be waiting hours. They are already stretched so thin. Currently, 3 troopers cover 4 counties. If our deputy road patrol millage fails, it'll be 5. Can you imagine needing to call 911 for someone breaking into your house, or hearing a domestic violence situation at the neighbors and the closest trooper is coming from Gladwin? This is honestly what we could be facing. This is not a scare tactic. It is not manageable or safe. Also, your emergency better happen before 10 p.m. before the Michigan State Police shift is over, as Isabella County Sheriff's Office is the only law enforcement agency to patrol and respond to emergencies 24/7. The loss of our deputy road patrol will have economic ramifications for years to come. The lack of police coverage out in the county areas could affect people's decision on where to buy homes and open businesses. If we lose our deputies, it will take nearly a decade to recover. Just ask Montcalm County. Losing our deputy road patrol would be catastrophic for our community. I ask you to please vote yes on our deputy road patrol millage on November 4th. The safety and security of our county depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. I believe we have no other presentations this evening, so that moves us on to item 7, public comment. Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up public comment at 7:22 p.m.
No one's online.
Thank you. Seeing no one jumping forward, let the record also show that nobody's connected remotely. Last opportunity. We'll close public comment at 7:23 p.m. That brings us to item 9 on the agenda, report boards and comments. We have 2 openings on the Planning Commission, and someone is going to correct me on the other. I believe 1 on ZBA, which is an alternate. We did get a application for Planning Commission. I did have a chance to meet, I should say, talk to, on the phone twice with a gentleman, Mr. Brown. We are shy a trustee this evening. If this board would like me to wait, I can wait till the next meeting to make a nomination. Otherwise, I'd like to fill the seat.
I think we have a quorum. I'm
Let's
ready.
fill it.
Okay.
Fill it.
So with that, you have an application that I believe I sent to all of you Thursday or Friday. It came out, I think, the day of the packet or the day after. His name is Philip Brown. What I got from him in conversations kind of comes through in his resume. He's a IT systems administrator. He chose to move here, which is interesting because the company he works for is actually, I think, was Maryland. And so he works completely remote, but this is the community he chose to come to, having been a student here years ago. Wanted the environment that Union Township provides. And I did ask, it does say Maryland there. I was looking for it, I didn't see it. If any of you knew Mr. Brown at all? And is that
No.
correct that nobody did?
No.
Nope.
Have Any issues?
No.
No, not at all.
His
With that,
resume
then,
looks
I would like to nominate Philip Brown to the Planning Commission with a term ending February 15th, 2025.
Support. Support. Do I just,
Nomination by myself, support by Bills. Any discussion? All in favor of the nomination to appoint Mr. Brown to the Planning Commission, term ending this coming February, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Awesome, thank you, Board. And you can tell the Planning Commission trustee, Thering, that do our best to get that last seat filled. And I'd like to just take a moment, Ryan Buckley just stepped down, I think it was about a week and a half ago or so. And I served years ago with Ryan Buckley on the Planning Commission. I really enjoyed him as a planning commissioner. He had a very strong voice and very strong opinions about what he was dealing with, and I always appreciated that. Life changes for people. And it was, he knew he wasn't going to re-up this February, and he had had conversations recently over this past year about those life changes and how that was becoming a difficult journey to continue to serve. So I just want to say thanks to him for all his service to Union Township. And he is by the way, our ZBA liaison for the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission will need to go through that process of appointing someone. All right, moving on. Planning Commission EDA, ZBA updates by our Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. Nanny. It's all yours.
Well, thank you very much. We had busy boards. Our EDA board held the second of their 2 required special informational meetings on August 20th, and we did not have any audience for that, so it's a very short meeting. Their regular meeting followed that, and they had one business item on the agenda, and that was an initial discussion of priorities for the 2025 budget for the 2 DDA districts. So it was a lively discussion, and we'll be obviously following that up with the proposed budget recommendations. So that as I said, was a lively EDA board meeting. The Planning Commission had a very busy meeting as well on the 20th. They had 4 business items. The first one was a special use permit. First one of this type was for an accessory dwelling unit in a new single-family home on Paddock Lane. I don't know how many are familiar with accessory dwelling units, but it's essentially the idea of having a mother-in-law apartment. That's often what people think of. But this doesn't have to be for the mother-in-law necessarily. It can be for a variety of purposes. But it is a second dwelling unit within the home, but not to the point of being a duplex. This is the idea: is you have a primary home, and then you have essentially a smaller incidental second dwelling that's related to it. So this was a new home proposed to be built by Hammer Builders. The special use permit was granted. The public hearing was held, and they did approve that special use permit. They also held a public hearing on updates to our sign regulations in the zoning ordinance. This item will be coming to you. Right now it's before the county, because after the public hearing, given the Planning Commission, after some discussion on it, did ultimately recommend that the proposed amendments be adopted. Under the State Zoning Act, their recommendation actually goes to the County Planning Commission before it comes to the Board of Trustees. So the County Planning Commission has 30 days to respond to that. We expect this item will be on your agenda in late September. The sign regulations changes were largely to actually add flexibility, especially in working with changes to existing signs, to create some more opportunities for modernizing and updating existing signs, and also to expand some opportunities for temporary signage that don't require permits. So those items will be coming to you.
They also had a discussion, initial discussion, on some changes to the site plan requirements in the zoning ordinance. We've noted over the past, certainly recently, it's called the past 18 months, 2 years, we've had more and more final site plans that have come to the Planning Commission ready to go. They've met all the requirements that apply. And that's great, and that reflects the work that staff. It also reflects the work of the project engineers and developers to respond to our ordinance requirements. The interesting thing, though, is that under both our state law and the zoning ordinance, a site plan that meets all the requirements, both elements state that it must be approved. There's no discretion. That once it's determined that that final site plan meets all the applicable requirements of township ordinances and planning documents, it must be approved. And so essentially the Planning Commission ends up, there's been some discussion, essentially sort of feeling like a rubber stamp. You know, why is this here, essentially, is the question. Because they really don't have anything they can do except say, it looks great, thank you very much, and approve it. And so we had a conversation with the Planning Commission some time ago about potentially creating an amendment to the ordinance that might allow for administrative approval of final site plans that are found to comply fully with the ordinance. And we put this proposed amendment together. The idea would be is to speed up the development review process for projects like that. This certainly could take a few weeks off of that process, and also make it easier to move those projects ahead to construction where they are in full compliance with the ordinance. So that item, they did review the proposal and set a public hearing for their September meeting on that item. The other item on their agenda was the item on your agenda tonight, which is the updates to the sidewalk and pathway construction policies. They reviewed an updated version of the policy, the same document you have before you tonight. It had some final changes that the Planning Commission asked for at their previous meeting. They did take action after reviewing that to recommend that to the Board of Trustees for approval in the format that you see it tonight. With that's the summary of the items on from the meetings. There was one item addition, if I may take an extra moment. Talking about sidewalks, a question came up about easements, and I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts. And I know we may talk a bit more about the policy, but this is related to the sidewalk ordinance. We have the sidewalk ordinance that was adopted in July has a provision in it that it states that new sidewalk and pathway construction not located within an existing road right-of-way or easement shall require establishment of an easement that's recorded at the Register of Deeds office. And the question was, can we require that? Is that appropriate? The language was reviewed by the Township attorney and was okayed by the attorney. It's consistent with those policies and direction. One thing I will note, easement is an encumbrance on property. So we are here working within the realm of the Bill of Rights, so basic constitutional rights related to private property. If there were to be a project, because this what we're really talking about here is projects subject to get the site plan approval, a development project of some sort, where they're installing a sidewalk along the front of the property as part of the project. If we have a case where they're not able to install that sidewalk within the road right of way, because unfortunately we do have a problem where we have significant roads that have very little right of way outside of the curb, and they would put it on the private property across the front of the property, but choose for whatever reason to not want to put an easement on that. That would really ultimately be a legal question. We would bring that back to our township attorney. Certainly, it would comply with our site plan, because that's the requirement: is that show it on the plan, construct it as you show it on the plan. But if somebody absolutely did not wish to put an easement on that, certainly the question would be turned over to the attorney at that point. But largely, we would be governed by the requirements we follow in our Constitution related to private property, and we are We can require that sidewalk to be constructed, but we cannot necessarily require encumbrance of an easement on that property.
That sucks.
But there are certainly good reasons to have an easement for protection of that property
Yeah.
owner. But ultimately, that would become a legal question.
But the sidewalk would still be constructed.
Absolutely, because
No one can go on it.
that's a requirement of the site plan.
Okay.
And I don't know if someone else brought this question up, but I know I'm one of those people that did, after reviewing some things. And I want to reiterate what you had just said and maybe just paraphrase it a different way. So if someone doesn't grant that easement, but they put a sidewalk in, then, correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe then the liability rests solely on that property owner for that sidewalk. And so that's where that protection comes in. If I were a property owner, I would want to, you still own the property, but I want to provide that easement for a sidewalk, because then you're taking that liability away from your business. Is that a reasonable statement?
I would say that's reasonable, yes.
And where my question originally came from, if you remember the ordinance we recently passed, was with temporary relief. My question was, well, if we give temporary relief, can we require easement at that time so we know that that sidewalk can be built when we call in that temporary relief? And so I learned a lot more about this than I wanted to during the journey, but anyways, we'll get to more of that here. So thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome. And I'm happy to answer any other questions, Chad.
I just have a statement. I think that the administrative approval of the final site plan is a great idea.
I just had a quick question. A while back, there was discussion about a oil change place on Bluegrass. Is that still coming, or is that on hold, or?
The development has all the approvals that are needed with the exception of, as I understand, there's a utility easement that they have not yet provided for a water line. And
Okay.
once that is resolved, I believe that everything is in place for them to start work.
Okay, thank you.
Can I follow up on the administrative idea for the SU site plans? So right now we have a initial site plan that is fairly administrative, correct?
Well, we have a preliminary
But that-
site plan. Right.
preliminary,
Yeah,
that-
that is actually a planning commission.
Planning
action.
commission. And do most of them go through that, or do some of them ever jump to that final?
Yeah. So there is an option to combine the two. It's really, we're really reviewing a final site plan, but we call it a combined preliminary final. We follow the final site plan standards. It actually is pretty rare. We've had a couple of them done it. The challenge is that in order to do that, they have to have all their outside agency approvals in place, and essentially they have to hit the mark the first try in terms of meeting all the requirements. It is possible, but it is pretty rare. We generally don't recommend it simply because the preliminary site plan process actually is very helpful to the applicant. And not only because they get a staff review, and here are things that you need to be aware of for right now, and also for the final site plans. We always review ahead and say, here's some things to think about for the final site plan as in terms of ordinance requirements. But also, frankly, for hearing from the Plan Commission, because often comments will come up, questions will come up that result in adjustments to the plan. So that preliminary site plan, you can think of it more conceptual. It's not fully engineered. They don't have there's no detailed landscaping plan on there unless they'd like to provide one. It's the idea is, here's the concept, here's the layout broadly. This is what we intend to do with this property, and the Plan Commission, once they approve it, then essentially everything else is just the details. So the idea behind that is for the Plan Commission to get an early look, but also for the applicant to get comments as early as possible in the process.
So what's being discussed now then with administrative would be that second stage.
That final stage. Yeah,
That makes me
final
feel a lot better, because I thought of it as a planning commissioner, it's very helpful to go through those site plans. I mean, because that shapes your experience, your knowledge in ones that you do have to review in detail. And as you start looking at master plan and zoning requirements, new ordinances or tweaking ordinances, you want to draw on that experience from that review process. So, yeah, I'm very supportive of that idea too now, that I better understand it. Other comments? Thanks so much for your time. Board member reports, item 9D on our agenda. Trustee Therian?
I am all set.
He does it all, doesn't he?
He's great.
Trustee Brown?
All set tonight.
All set.
Trustee Smith?
To kind of carry on what Commissioner Engler said, they went over the budget, they adopted or approved some millage rates for the Isabella Commission on Aging, the medical care facility, Parks and Recreation, and the ICTC. One thing that was interesting, when they did the presentation from the medical care facility, that it's at a 85% occupancy there. Just talked about a little bit about the services that they do, some 2-week rehabs and stuff like that. It was really informative on what the medical care facility does. It's not just long-term, but also short-term rehabilitation as well. I thought that was pretty interesting. Presentation of the budget, there was a lot of discussion surrounding that. And I think probably yesterday they had some follow-up meetings, and so we'll probably get a more detailed view next Tuesday at their session, and then they set the public hearing for the 25 proposed budget at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, September 3rd. So that is when they will be doing the public hearing on the budget, which I'm sure everybody's eagerly awaiting.
Some are.
Yeah, but there were just a lot of discussion on, they do have the contingency on, leaving it, and then there's always all these wants that weren't funded and stuff, so I know the commissioners were having a lot of debate and discussion on what was going to be going on with that, so we'll probably find out next week. That's it.
Awesome, thank you. Treasurer Rice?
You're already giving me the look. You know what's coming. So taxes are coming due soon, September 16th. So I highly recommend, if you have not paid yet, to pay online or bring it in, because postmark is not accepted. So you will get a late fee. Hint, hint, bring it in or pay online. So you can avoid the late fees. So other than that, that's it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Like Trustee Therian, Mr. Nanny covered the EDA pretty well, so with that, we'll move on to consent agenda. Who had warrants?
I did.
Any issues?
No.
I'd be happy to entertain
I would
motion.
like to know why the lawnmower caught on fire.
When?
You had to get a new lawnmower engine because the lawnmower caught on fire?
Yeah, we did have a riding lawnmower catch fire earlier this summer. I don't know. I think you asked when.
No, I just didn't know why it caught on fire. I never heard of that before.
I don't know that I know why, but I've heard. I mean, any internal combustion engine can catch on fire.
Well, for sure.
But
I
Engine
was
could
just
have had a
thinking-
hole in it, and you hot oil and grass. And,
Yeah.
Was someone
I mean, it
riding it?
happens.
Yeah.
yeah,
And are
yeah,
they're
one of
they're
our
okay?
Temporary staff. Yeah, everybody's fine.
Okay.
Stop, drop, and roll. Oh my God. I just thought it was, I was going through the checks, I'm like, lawnmower fire? Okay, $3,000. That's a lot.
But I don't know why. I think it was just one of those things. It was not operator error or anything
No,
like
yeah,
that.
sure.
Um,
Well, I'm glad
But-
that our worker was okay.
yeah, it was put out. Nobody was hurt. No grass fires. None of that kind of stuff.
So what does a lawnmower engine run for a rider?
It was about $3,000. Wow. Yeah, there was no drop in the bucket. But I'm glad the person's okay. We don't want
Yes.
loss of any people.
Absolutely. I am happy to entertain any
I
motions.
move to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Motion by Bill, support by Brown. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor of the motion to approve consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 11, new business. This is our second reading of ordinance number 24-03 to repeal outdated and unenforceable township ordinances. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to introduce this a second time?
Yes, I will briefly. There's a report on page 20 of your agenda packet. I'll just mention the ordinances that are being considered for repeal. One is the junkyard ordinance that was established in February 1957. There's an ordinance establishing procedures and standards for licenses to sell beer, wine, and spirits that is being recommended for removal. Adult entertainment business ordinance established in 1989. Marijuana dispensary and growing facility ordinance established in 2011. All notices, prior readings, all the technical requirements to repeal these have been done, and primarily the reason for the recommendation to adopt this ordinance in front of you that repeals these four ordinances I just referenced is that in addition to being outdated, they're essentially unenforceable. So happy to answer any questions you have.
I move to conduct a second reading for and to adopt ordinance number 24-03 to repeal outdated and unenforceable township ordinances.
Support.
Motion by Bills, support by Smith. Discussion?
They need to go.
Here, here.
Yep.
Any other discussion?
No, sir.
Temporary clerk Thering, would you do a roll call of the board to conduct the second reading and adopt the ordinance 24-03, please?
Supervisor Milky.
Yes.
Treasurer Rice.
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Trustee Bills.
Here, yes.
Trustee Brown.
Here. Yes.
Trustee Thering is yes. It is unanimous, 6 ayes to 0 nays.
Thank you, Trustee Thering. Just a note, my computer just keeps telling me it's going to reboot soon, and it's no longer giving me the option of putting it off. So if I seem confused in about 10 minutes and 39 seconds, you'll know why.
That means we got 10 minutes, right?
Let's
Right.
go.
Let's go. Okay. That brings us to new business, 11B. Adoption of the updated sidewalk and pathways construction policy resolution proposed and recommended by the Planning Commission. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to introduce this, please?
Thank you, and there's a report in your packet on page 25 of your packet. We have an existing policy. It was adopted in 2018. It establishes a set of guidelines to follow to assist with the implementation of the then sidewalk pathway ordinance that we have since updated with a new ordinance. That policy is still on the books. Before we had that policy, there were many times when discussions of sidewalks dominated planning commission meetings and sidewalk or site plan review meetings. Deemed we needed a policy. We put one together in 18, and then fast forward a few weeks ago, the board adopted an updated sidewalk pathway ordinance. That ordinance requires a sidewalk and pathway construction policy to guide in the construction of those sidewalks. The ordinance requires that the Planning Commission review the policy and make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. So that's all background. In earlier meetings, or at least in your agenda packet now, there were several, half a dozen or more, deficiencies noted with the existing policy. I'm not going to list all those right now. The Planning Commission has been working this policy. They discussed the policy, and it's in the form of a resolution during both their June and July regular business meetings, and then again at their August meeting last week, referenced by Mr. Nanny a few minutes ago. They voted unanimously to recommend that the Board of Trustees adopt this policy resolution. Upon adoption of whatever policy we end up with, the new policy would supersede and update the previous document and would be put in place pretty much immediately. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have on this item.
I move to adopt the new sideway and pathway construction policy resolution as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Support.
Motion by Bill, support by Rice. Discussion? Trustee Smith?
First question I have is, so the guideline to grant relief or development in zoned property areas is going away. So that is, I see it as on page 26 of the packet. It says the blanket guideline to grant relief or development located on property zoned industrial is counterproductive and goes on there. Doesn't mean that you can't grant it relief. It's just saying that that automatic granting of relief is not going to happen, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So on a case-by-case basis, along with everything else, it still could be granted?
Correct.
Okay.
They have to meet certain criteria, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Second question, if I may continue, if
Sure,
that's okay.
absolutely.
Page 30 of the packet, number 3, if the cost to construct the sidewalk or pathway is greater than 50% of overall project cost, is that a new one or is that in the existing policy?
It's in the existing policy.
That's in the existing policy, so that's not a change. Okay.
No, the only change to that one was some language, the language architect license bill, some clarifying language there that was requested, but the policy itself was in the 2018 version.
Okay. And then my last question at the bottom of that same page in number 7. For project where a site plan is subject to administrative review and approval by the zoning administrator, such as minor site plan is authorized by the zoning ordinance as amended, the zoning administrator shall have the authority to grant or reject any request. And of course, after that, it would go to the planning commission if they didn't agree with it and stuff like this. You're following the kind of the same guidelines as stated above, or is there different guidelines that you follow when you approve or disapprove administratively?
No, it'd be the same guidelines.
Same guidelines.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
See, when no one jumping in, I'm going to jump in, if that's okay.
Go.
Item B2, this is page 30 of the packet. It says less than 50% of the surveyed sections of the township along the roads fronting the proposed development has sidewalks. And then it goes on the next sentence, and this is what cued me into my comment that I'm going to give. If on a corner lot, the mile will extend in both directions along the frontage roads. And so when I read that, I immediately thought, what mile is it referring to, other than it's in both directions? But if the previous sentence says 50% of the surveyed sections, well, what is surveyed? Is it a mile? In other words, the second sentence qualifies how far the survey section will extend, but it doesn't say that in that first sentence. Does that make sense?
I don't know what you mean.
So if you read that second sentence, it says, if on a corner lot, this mile will extend in both directions along the frontage roads. And then now when you read the first sentence, it says less than 50% of the surveyed sections of the township along the roads fronting the proposed development has sidewalks. It doesn't indicate where it's surveying for any consistency on that frontage for a road.
Is it
Just
from the
says
corner out
Yeah.
or from the edge of the property line
Doesn't
out? Is
say.
that what you're asking?
It's
It
a
doesn't
corner
say,
lot,
and
so
I
it'd
might-
be that corner to the mile down on
Then
both
it
ways.
should, then it should say that.
It does.
It
In
does?
my opinion.
I think administratively, we understand the question,
Okay.
and the answer may help the rest of the board. Mr. Nanny.
Thank you.
The term surveyed sections of the township, each Michigan township is 36 surveyed sections. That's where that language came from. This policy is also in the 2018 policy, and was carried over. But surveyed sections is referring to one of those 36 sections of a Michigan township. And so the idea is that wherever that property is on the road that's associated with that section, each section's a mile on a square. The property may not be in the center of that section, a half mile east, a half mile west of the section boundary. It may actually be closer to one side or the other. So it's simply saying that the road along that section, so let's say the property is in section 6. So the road that is borders section 6 then is the mile that they're talking about. If the property happens to be on a corner, then the mile extends both north and south and east and west, or whatever directions those are, two directions. So essentially there would effectively be a mile in one way and a mile in the other. But in most cases it's simply the property is part of that surveyed section, and whatever the road length is, that mile of road length within that same surveyed section would apply.
Would it be better to say there than on the corner lot, surveyed sections in both directions?
It certainly would be an improvement.
The reason I say that is mile is pretty clear that it's a mile, whereas in our township, if you're abutted against the city, you might have a surveyed section, which is a quarter mile.
Right.
And we certainly don't want to extend into the city in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So in that light, I'd propose that we clarify that, just for consistency, and so nobody interprets it as a true mile.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. As soon as you started talking, I realized what surveyed section was going to mean here. You meant by the true meaning of that. Yeah, makes perfect sense.
We might capitalize that also to help.
Oh, yeah, that might help. Thank you. I'm just checking my notes here. In a previous presentation by our director, we talked about easements. And item C, I just want to lift that up. I took note of this section C as something in the policy that addressed what I was trying to get answers to regarding the ordinance that we had passed. So I'll just lift that up. And this is probably my biggest issues with item E. I was confused a little bit. I really like this overall. This is a much clearer policy than we've ever had, and we've had a lot of issues with our policies in the past regarding the sidewalks and pathways. But item E I had some struggles with because it lists 3 items and it's labeled funding priorities, and I didn't see them as funding priorities, but different mechanisms used to fund things. In other words, I don't see number 1 as the top priority. That's just a given that if this board wants to put in a pathway or a sidewalk, then we're going to do it. That's the decision of this board. The second one being really speaking to those SUPs. There goes my systems rebooting. I'm going to be confused for a bit. Second one going to those SUPs. I've got this in front of me. Requiring that sidewalks put in through that SUP process are the responsibility of the developer property owner, right? And then item 3 is something we've had prior discussions with. This is something that's referenced in the state law that is an option to this board always. But my sense was from this board, and you correct me if I misread things, was that's an option we don't likely see us ever exercising except in extreme cases.
Right.
Right, that was,
Right?
mhm.
But we chose to list it because it is part of the state law. We're given that authority. We want it to be transparent to everybody that goes through this process, that's always an option, right? So I guess where I really struggle with E is I didn't see them as priorities. These are different mechanisms, and I don't want people getting confused doing an SUP and saying, well, the top priority is Charter Township Union is going to fund it, the EDA or the EDA, or some combination thereof. I didn't want that confusion here. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from. A couple things that may help. One, the sidewalk and pathway construction policy is applicable across the board. It's not to be used only by the planning commission. Okay?
Right.
And so I want to point that out. And so in that regard, the only section that really applies to the planning commission from a temporary relief perspective is section B of this policy.
2. Oh,
Well,
B.
all of B.
Oh,
B as
all
in
of B.
boy.
Thank you.
Okay, because that's the sub-policy was in the policy to grant relief. So if we're not talking about granting relief, from a site plan perspective, the planning commission is not going to involve themselves in it's not going to be involving themselves in a funding question, for one. And this was put in here because this language was in the old policy, state law, but some folks got pretty exercised about the fact that we could do it and trying to, at one point they just didn't want it in there at all, didn't want it addressed, I guess thinking that that might prevent the Board of Trustees from exercising what their rights are in state law. And so to counter that, we put that in this funding section. And the funding of a site plan related sidewalk would be governed by section 2. I mean, that's to state explicitly that that's where that funding is expected to come from. If we needed to put in section 3, because we want to make it obvious that that we have the right to take advantage of our rights, then you need something to compare it to, which then brought in 2 and 1.
And I get that. I'm sorry, were you done?
Yes.
I get that. My concern is an applicant from the planning commission side getting confused and seeing this and saying, but it says priority 1 is Charter Township of Union General Fund. Why am I being picked on here as priority 2? So if it were clear to say, does it say anywhere that,
It doesn't say in this order or in this priority, but
it says priorities and then lists 1, 2, and 3, and I can interpret that as priority 1, priority 2, priority 3.
you are interpreting that, but it
I
doesn't
am.
say that.
Funding options, does that make a,
That makes, yes.
does that answer some of
That,
your?
that helps a lot. The only thing that, in addition to that, I'd like either pointed out, that would help a lot, would be, where is there language that indicates that in the case of an SUP requirement, because of our zoning ordinance, that it's falling to 2 and not in lap 1 in this case?
The zoning ordinance says the developer is required to put in sidewalks.
Yeah,
Does it say they have to pay for it?
yeah, they have to pay for the whole
They're
project.
paying for the project.
I would like to see things be as crystal clear as possible. I mean, we all understand, I understand, because sitting through the conversations that we had, we kind of missed that part, but if we could do anything to make something just that much more clear to somebody who maybe doesn't understand and had the conversations we had, I think that's beneficial.
And that's what I'm trying to articulate.
I'm
Yes.
agreeing with you.
I didn't want the
that if there's a-
confusion.
If there's a better way to word that, that might make it more clear.
The most clear, the absolute clearest would be to remove section E. Number 1 is given. Number 3 is given. Number 2, per the code,
It's
zoning
given.
code is a given.
I would agree.
We, the administration, developed section E in large part in response to a concern that was revolving around number 3. And the concern being the certain citizenry or what have you, stakeholders, weren't very thrilled with the idea that the Board of Trustees could do this. Now, if we want to make it apparent in response to the stakeholders that, yes, number 3 exists, but it's the lowest priority, it's the lowest, that we need something above it, for one. And funding priorities options, I think that I don't see a problem with that. But that's kind of the backstory, and that's the,
Nope.
yeah.
I get that. I think this board overrode the recommendation of the planning commission and decided to leave that particular language in for transparency reasons.
In the ordinance.
Yes, in the ordinance. I like your idea of just getting rid of this section, because it's in our ordinance, pretty clear. In fact, really, as you stated, 1 is a given, 2 is a given via the sidewalk ordinance, and 3 is a given via state ordinance or laws. You all have feelings about this?
After kind of listening more about the number 3, I guess I would like to leave it in, let's say 10, 15 years from now. You got somebody in these positions that's not doing their research into sidewalk funding, and this is not in any documentation. A future board may not realize that that is possible. So if it is possible, I think it's our, responsibility to put it in the document for not necessarily this board, but future boards to know that it is a possibility in case it's ever missed. That's just my thoughts.
And keep in mind that Section E funding options understanding that there's other ordinances that may override a policy, zoning ordinance. There are funding options for sidewalks generally. There are certain pieces and areas and definitions of sidewalks that come into play in other ordinances that this policy isn't going to be able to effectuate. Zoning code requires sidewalks. Developer wants relief, you go to section B only. The developer wants help paying for their development, that's a different question. Whether it's sidewalks or landscaping or 3 stories versus 2 stories or, stairs versus escalators. And I would only caution the board, I just know that The planning commission, yes, wanted this out of that ordinance. The board said no. It's gonna stay in there because it's our right, state law. And so then it became the question of how do we message that the board is not likely to take advantage, if you will, of that state law. And we thought the best place to do that would be in the policy. And as soon as we decided that, we created the need for a section E.
And I get that, and I appreciate trying to articulate item 3 being the lowest priority, because I think that's accurate from everything I've heard, obviously from the planning commission's perspective, as well as this board. And as I'm reading or thinking of your suggestion for, is the word options in place of priorities. As I read section 3 again, it says the lowest priorities for funding.
Can you use the word like may prioritize? Is the general policy that the Board of Trustees may prioritize the funding of sidewalks?
You don't have we can't prioritize because some of it is ordinance and some of it is our own doing, then we pay. So we don't have the option to prioritize. Am I correct on that?
1 and 3, we could.
One of them, yes, but not, we can't just go into 2.
Well,
So
I'm just trying to think of a way to just phrase it without changing too much that doesn't necessarily make number 1 the first priority.
Well, that's what Brian was saying before, is just say instead of prioritize, is say list options of funding.
and you can still have options there and
As
leave
follows.
3, you still have
Sure.
lowest priority, and just leave that in there.
Okay.
And I think it still makes sense.
Maybe just
saying
change it.
this is like, you
Yeah.
know,
We're
that's-
mincing
okay.
words here, I think, just with the options in there, like you said.
You want to put
That
the
takes
word
away priority.
possible in front of funding, that may help
Yeah.
you.
Exactly,
Possible funding options.
yeah,
yeah, yep.
that's good.
There you go.
All right,
Sounds
so
good.
I'm hearing 2 suggested changes. Let me ask the question. The section 1 on B2, clarifying that second sentence to not say mile, but continue the language of survey sections. Maybe capitalize those 4. Is
Will you
there
say that
objection?
again? I'm sorry. I
On page 30 of the packet,
Yep.
item B2,
Yep.
second sentence references the term mile. The first sentence references the language surveyed section or
Yep.
sections. That we capitalize surveyed sections so it's understood exactly that that's the proper
Terminology.
definition of such. And then use that same language in that second sentence in place of mile. Is there objections to that?
None.
You gave the motion, trustee Bills, would you be willing to accept that change into that motion?
Yes,
And who gave support?
I did. Yes.
You okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to move us along here.
Nope.
Regarding item E, what I'm hearing is, I heard a couple suggestions, funding options or possible funding priorities. Is that enough to clarify
not priority, we're taking priority
I
out.
thought it was
Funding-
possible funding options.
Yeah.
possible funding options?
Possible funding
Is that what
options,
it-
I think
okay.
that's what manager said.
Does that help? And let me ask, are there objections to that?
No
As an
objections.
None.
amendment? So I'm hearing the first and seconder say that's okay.
Correct.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion people want to bring up on this? None? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to pass this pathway sidewalk policy recommended by the planning commission with 2 minor changes. Everybody clear on the changes and the motion? Okay, this is a roll call vote. Trustee Therian, would you do a roll call of the board on the motion?
Sure. Supervisor Milky,
Yes.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Trustee Bills.
Yes.
Trustee Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Thering is a yes.
Awesome.
It passes unanimously.
Thanks for listening to me, board. Appreciate it.
It's what we
do. It's what we do. Hey, my computer's back and my stuff's gone, so. Moving on, new business, I'm good.
Okay.
This is the easy part now. New business, C, declare vacancy on the Cultural and Recreational Commission Board. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you introduce this, please?
Thank you. There's a report on this item that begins on page 33 of your agenda packet. When this was put together, everything in that report was accurate, current. After the board packet went out, we did hear from the incumbent that confirmed the resignation. So there is no need to take action to declare the seat vacated. So there's that. I didn't want to take the item off the agenda though, because there's a lot of other information in the memo related to the CRC itself and what your appointee would be doing. So I just thought I'd keep that in there for the benefit of the board, education, call it what you want. But you don't need to take any action on this. That being said, if there's any questions anybody has on the content or anything, be happy to answer that. Thank you.
Questions?
Nope.
I have one at least. Reading through the interlocal agreement back from 1995, it's a partnership, and I'll just list a few: the county, the city, the school district, the tribe, Central Michigan
No,
University.
not the tribe.
They ended up not being a signatory on it.
That's
Chippewa
why I
Township.
noticed the signatory was not there. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I just thought it hadn't.
Why they didn't remove it from the preamble area, I don't know.
Don't know? Okay. Thank you for that clarification. In any event, as I read through it, it states to be an authority. Is that an authority? It says CRC Commission authority. Is that an authority in the definition that the state would use as an authority? I'm referencing page 37 in the packet. Are they actually a public authority?
No, that just means what authority they have.
Yes. The interlocal agreement, which was the vehicle chosen to create this entity, is creating a Cultural and Recreation Commission, CRC, Cultural and Recreation Commission. That was created, and they used the Urban Cooperation Act, which is an act often used to create these kind of things. On page 37, that begins to, as Trustee Bills indicated, what authority does the commission have
Okay.
in their wheelhouse?
And that makes good sense. So this is not a public body?
Oh, yes.
It is.
Public body, subject to OMA and everything for you. It's from that perspective, other than the rules that it might apply specifically to this entity, it's no different than meetings are posted, minutes are posted, it's open to the public. They schedule their meetings at the beginning of the year for the year.
Yep.
Um,
And they have financials. Their financial report would consist of basically the debt payment, any grants that was held for them by the community foundation. There was like 2 or 3 that were specific to the CRC that they could tap into. And then just the listing of the donors and the current status of that. So that was the main financial portion that the CRC did. Then there was a sub-board underneath them that did the day-to-day operations of the ice arena and Maury courts. And that's where all your P&L was done at that sub-board that rented from them. And the payments for that was basically paying off the mortgage. So the CRC board didn't take money in. It was just that sub-board was paying the debt payment on the mortgage. If that makes sense.
It does. I only ask these questions because we never see financials or anything, and I thought if they're actually a public board, then shouldn't there be more transparency? Because I mean, that's how the public is supposed to operate. And so I just was curious if either I'm missing it, or does this township, as one of the, we're one of the representatives in the agreement, we appoint a representative. Do we have the ability to publish that information if they're not going to, so that the public can see it? I just wanted to, I don't know much about the CRC, and
I don't have as
ignorance.
much experience as, say, Trustee Smith. But the CRC was, and is, the body that was created. And you can read it in the first 3, 4 whereases, what their purpose was. And then you get, okay, so that body is going to do these things. The agreement, the interlocal agreement, outlined the authority that this commission has. And one of those authorities that I think has been discussed here is that, it's number 3 on page 37 of your packet, to make and enter into contracts, hire, discharge employees, acquire, construct, manage, operate, contract with somebody to build it, contract with somebody to operate it. They have all those kind of authorities. And they've exercised that authority through the creation of, I forget the name of it, some other body that I think has formal standing. And I believe it might be a nonprofit. I'm not sure that matters one way or the other. What I'm pretty certain of, though, is that lower body, I don't know if they're subject to.
I don't think the lower body is technically a public body, because
Okay.
they're just actually the renters of the property. So it was just the CRC, which is the public body. The underneath it was more of an operational lease, so they were not subject to open meetings.
Right.
Where
Okay,
do
fair
you-
enough. And, but none of that, in my reading of this and the bylaws, obviates the requirement of the CRC doing the things that they say in this document they're required to do. To kind of get to your question. They're required to, all these public entities created the commission through the interlocal agreement. Operational responsibilities include preparation, adoption of filing with the governing body, an annual budget of operations and maintenance of facilities, for instance. Now, so what that says to me as a practical matter in their current construct is the CRC would be communicating to their renters, their contractors, their vendors, whatever you want to call them. I develop an annual budget of operations and maintenance so that us as the CRC board members can perform our responsibilities, execute our responsibilities, something along those lines. Now, I don't know if I'm answering your question or
You are, I guess,
confusing your comment or whatever I'm doing, but
it just seemed if it's a public body, that it has certain public obligations by being a public body. And I'm less concerned if there are no public funds expended in this commission. Because if there's public funds in there, then people ought to know how their funds are being spent. And maybe that's the case. I don't know how they're fully funded.
When I was on the board, there was no public funds being used. It was all donations, and I think the nexus for having this body created was to create tax benefits to people that were giving money, providing initial funding capital to this organization to start up the ice arena. And then they were able to get loans based on some of that matching funding. So this was an opportunity not only for that, but then future grants. People wanted to donate, it became a tax write-off at that point too. So that's why there was a benefit that this was set up as a nonprofit, the CRC. They don't take public funds, but it was more of a vehicle to help the funding mechanisms.
They don't take public funds. But because of their setup, and this is also a financial benefit,
Yeah.
they are not subject to property taxes. Now
Yes.
That's just the inverse of they don't take public
Yeah.
funds.
Right.
We don't tax them. But if the board's interested in what they do, how they do it, if they do it, then I think the interest is probably irregardless of whether they're taking public funds.
So along these lines, second question, they have assets though, right? I mean, the ice arena
Yeah.
is
Yep, they
owned
have
by
assets.
who? The CRC?
The CRC.
Yeah.
So those are public assets.
Yes, and there's an audit was done, I don't think it was at least every other year or every 3 years? There was a periodic audit. I think we went to every year towards the end. It was a quick one, but we did an audit just to make sure everything was, especially with the loan and stuff. So there was, at least when I was on there were audits done.
It says in the
We-
thing
so-
that it has to be done by a CPA.
We have, just like we do with the road commission and other bodies, we have a staff representative that attends these CRC meetings, Mr. Nanny. Audits are required, I believe annually. I'd have to reread the document. And you can correct me if I misspeak, but I don't believe they've had an audit in 3 years. So there's the fiscal year just ending that if we don't have a published audit, the fiscal year ending before that, and the fiscal year ending before that. Don't know any of the details of why or whatnot, but yes, they have assets, and I don't know if this is where you're going also, but we have this wonderful facility in the community, and one of the charges of the CRC is that, one, it exists to begin with, and that it continue to exist.
Second part was where I was going.
And the continuing to exist, you know,
Needs oversight. Sorry to interrupt.
It says
your word,
it-
not
it-
mine.
It says it exists for 20 years and then they can all the bodies can decide if they want to redo it.
Which is coming up. No?
But I will be,
That happened
and
in
I'll be
15.
perfectly honest with you. I've been aware of the CRC, and you know, I got involved with them shortly after I got here. Because our building official and our code suggested that they need fire suppression. So I worked at the time with the then chairman of the board, now Trustee Smith, and we got that done. So all of a sudden, as I'm looking, you know, doing research, we got interlocal agreements, we got bylaws, and you sit back and you wait, and you kind of, eventually some of this information that you're supposed to get, the board doesn't come. So I'm sitting there going, do I push this or not? And I have not pushed it. And there's a wide range of reasons for that. But at some point, I can't ignore it as your manager. And I'm not doing it tonight, but I'm either gonna be letting you know that I'm gonna make a communication, and that's gonna, I don't need to tell you what that's gonna do. Write a nice letter, just simply requesting the information that's referenced on page whatever in the local agreement. Or I'm gonna ask the board to do that under a supervisor's signature or something. Or what I probably do is inform you beforehand that I'm about to send out this letter and I'm looking for your permission to do it. Because this is not a limb I'm walking out on by myself.
I guess why I brought some of this up was I kept seeing it as this public entity, and I kept thinking, how do I know this crown jewel of our community? Because it's highly regarded as that, I believe, is here to stay and is being well stewarded by those that are, there's no, at least from my perspective, I was not seeing public documentation as to the state of the CRC, and that I feel comfortable that suddenly it's not a liability in the community, but stays a crown jewel. And I guess that was where my perspective was coming from. I was like, yeah, how come we haven't seen any of this? So I don't know.
I mean, I don't know that that's what we're supposed to be talking about tonight. I thought we were just talking
It-
about a vacancy.
It was. I learned a lot more about the CRC as I was reading this, and in fact, I asked Trustee Smith some questions about it because I knew he had served on it, and the more it became apparent to me, I thought it was a public entity, then shouldn't it act like one? Anyways, that's all I have. Others on this? Thank you for answering my questions.
Yep.
Moving on then to item 11D, Policy Governance 2.9, Collaboration with Other Entities. Mr. Stuhldreher, this is yours.
So we have a report on this item on page 64 of your agenda packet. This is the annual review. It's supposed to be done in August of Policy 2.9, Collaboration with Other Entities. Policy wording: in order to maximize the achievement of ends, the township manager shall not fail to explore strategic partnerships and intergovernmental cooperation and to optimize collaboration with other entities in the region as appropriate. There's one sentence for the policy. I just read it. I interpret that to mean that professional relationships should be developed and maintained between the township and our community partners, whether they be public, private, nonprofit. Those relationships should exist at the administrative level and at the elected official level. I don't have any anything to do with the elected relationships, so I'll focus on the administrative relationships. So I'm interpreting that to be that from administration focus, I should have these relationships with these various entities. And that we should not just get together and say hi, but actually work to find areas where it can serve both our interests to partner and team up. And we're doing all this, and this is the main piece of the interpretation, is that there's a recognition by the board that Union Township wants to be involved, wants to be looking outside as appropriate of its corporate boundaries for the good of the region. So that's my interpretation of it. I think that's reasonable based on just simply my wording of, or my reading of the policy statement. There's data in your packet. I'll just touch on a few of those items in terms of there's collaboration going on both at a funding level and sometimes a lot of cooperation that doesn't necessarily require dollars, but it's still important. The EDA provides financial support to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. They provide financial support to Middle Michigan Development Corp. And those two are related: economic development, convention, tourist activities. So we provide financial support to that. We also co-sponsor the annual Festival of Banners. We do that monetarily. We also provide space for the program to operate. They use Jameson Park and gather for a few days or maybe a few weeks to paint the banners that you see up on the light pole. I took some initiative to provide, I'll call it technical support, to the Aquatic Authority as they were going about their business to make sure they were doing it within the constructs of public entities and all that kind of thing. There's an intergovernmental liaison committee that is composed of administrators and elected officials of the city, the county, the township, administrative officials of the tribe. We meet quarterly to discuss areas of mutual interest. The Community and Economic Development Director chairs the Airport Joint Operations Board, which was created maybe 3 years ago through a joint agreement with the city and MMDC, and I think the county and the tribe as well. So as far as the airport goes, we fund them. We provide some funding, $10,000 a year, plus we spend a fair amount of staff time all the way up to the point of chairing that operations board. I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the executive committee of the Middle Michigan Development Corporation. I actively participate in the County Emergency Management Center planning efforts. Township has representation through the manager on Hannah's Park. That's another area that we provide not only funding but also policy direction. Public Services Director sits on and chairs the Mid-Michigan Cable Consortium. They attend monthly, I think it's twice a month, road commission meetings. We routinely, the township, partners with the road commission to get work done on our roads in the township. I am on the ad hoc material recovery facilities. I probably got that wrong. On that ad hoc committee that has helped the county move forward with their efforts on the MRF area. We have day-to-day interactions with all kinds of entities around. Rodney meets every month or so often with the city planner, for instance. Attends the CRC meetings I mentioned earlier. Pretty much anywhere where we have a a Board of Trustees appointed position on some board, we're likely to have a staff liaison that's also at those meetings. So based on that, and there's other pieces of information in the report, I feel that we're in compliance with the policy. Sure, we could do more and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
No.
Report was due in August. Jack,
It's August.
read the, we read that there's a manager's interpretation there. Do you believe it's justified and reasonable?
Yes.
Yes.
Did it address all aspects of the policy?
Yes.
Yes.
And then, how about compliance?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I would agree on all those as well. Any area regarding this policy where is not clearly addressed in existing policy?
No.
I have no questions.
I'm only gonna lift up a comment, and it's addressed by the policy, but, I always wonder with CMU, why we don't have stronger interactions with them as a local government. We used to, more so. And I know the city has regular meetings with CMU. And that's done often with the elected officials, with some of the appointed officials there. But I just think they're a big part of our community, and that's something that I'm not sure I understand really why we're not better at communicating with them or them with us. Maybe we are in staff level, but as an elected official, I only see them at the luncheon, and that's about it. So I wish that were different. I'm not asking anything there, I'm just pointing that out. So we're all good with that?
Yes.
11E, Policy Governance 4.2, Accountability of the Township Manager. Bear with me, I have to catch up on my own. Sorry. For this board, I'm not gonna go through it, you've all read it. Do you believe this board is in compliance with this?
Yes.
Any objections to that?
No. No objections.
I agree we're in compliance. I will say that there was one thing I thought of as I looked at 4.22. Says the board as a group will not evaluate either formally or informally any staff other than the township manager. And I don't think we do that, although we will often publicly comment about performance of staff
In general.
in general. And I don't think it's a board statement, it's individual comments, and sometimes we speak as one voice even though they're individual comments. I don't think that's crossing any boundaries, right?
No.
Because if it is, then we should change the policy to allow for
That's
that.
not an evaluation. An evaluation
Right.
is pretty
Okay,
in-depth.
very good.
Okay.
I just want to make sure nobody had issue with that. Anything that we need to do to improve with regards to this policy?
No.
No.
Okay. Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good.
Moving on, last new business item. Item F on the agenda, individual performance review of the township manager. In our second July meeting, we were given an evaluation form in our packet. And I think everybody's had a chance to look at those. Who wants to say it? I think,
We want to table this discussion until the next time.
right, and I guess I want to make it clear that,
Some of us didn't.
some of
have
us
it.
had different forms than others got for whatever reason. And so our forms that we were filling out were not consistent. And,
Because I think I used the form from last year, and then that, I think, differed from the form that was sent out in the packet in July. So I think
Yeah.
and a couple others.
And not just you,
It's
collectively, we filled out different
So we
forms.
had different forms that had, mine had 1.0 still on it, and the other one started off at 1.1. So there were differing. Because I think the one form had township management, and we changed it last year to township manager to make it more specific as well, if I'm correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Some of the wording was changed, obviously so, but.
There was one form in your second meeting in July packet.
So,
I was
If
mistaken.
y'all didn't use that one, you could have used different forms.
yeah. So we'll go back to the July packet and use that. I apologize for using the wrong one.
In any event, I don't think this puts us, I hate delaying the process, but I don't think this puts us in a bind if we're able to tackle this at the next meeting. Do you-
No, it doesn't put you in a bind, I think, and I'll just mention it now. As I see moving forward, as it relates to the manager's performance review and contract negotiations, I have in my agenda planning particular, on at your September 25th meeting, the board will be hopefully landing on presenting a single performance evaluation at the board level to the manager. So whatever the preliminary work in terms of the individuals and the compilation, though I'm planning on an agenda item on the 25th for the single document. And then at the first meeting in October, which I believe is October 11th, that's the meeting where there'll be an agenda item to discuss, presumably agree, hopefully, on one, an extension of the employment agreement, because they're one-year agreements between myself and the township for 25, and then whatever that contents of that agreement would look like, that negotiation would occur at the first meeting in October.
It's October 9th, by the way.
9th, okay.
Well, September 25th, that gives us time still. If we address this in our first meeting in September, we can get the information collated, following our previous processes, and be ready for the 25th.
And
Sorry, I thought you were done.
I'm very interested in the individuals because I need to understand at an individual level. But I'm much more interested in the evaluation of the Board of Trustees as a collective, because that's who I work for. And I say that because I'm not going to be at your September 11th meeting. Kim Smith's going to be sitting in this chair because of Corporate Olympics. But unless you all care, I think you could proceed with your individuals and compilation exercise without me being here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easier that way too.
And then I think also on the September 25th, that allows you to, instead of speaking to individual comments, you're speaking back to the board's presentation of that evaluation too, which I think is good.
Yeah.
So did I hear a motion from you then?
To table that discussion. I move to table the discussion for the manager's evaluation.
Support.
Motion by Bills, support by Smith to table item 11F. Any other discussion? Everybody have the right form?
Let's have the right one.
The
Every year-
July packet.
The July 20,
We will,
Send out.
we will send you out the correct form.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just followed Trustee
It'll go
Smith.
in.
That's all I did.
It'll go in a single email to all of you. And if you're not able to print it out, let us know.
All right,
I'm leading.
is
people
anybody
astray.
expecting to not be here at that meeting? It'd be nice to have a full board.
I will be here.
I should be in town.
I'll be here.
Should be
Awesome,
here.
okay. And then hopefully Clerk Cody is able to be here. That'd be better with her as well, so.
It just seems every year it's gone smoother and smoother. I
Right.
don't see
Yeah.
why it wouldn't go smooth this year.
We did not take a vote on the motion, did we?
We did not.
We did
know.
not.
Any other discussion? Sorry. All in favor of the motion to table item 11F until our first September meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is tabled. That brings us to extended public comment, which is restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue.
Get up
If
here,
you
Commissioner.
choose, if you choose to address the public,
5 minutes, I can't do it.
please state your name and address for the record, and we'll open up extended public comment at 8:50 PM. Let the record show nobody's connected remotely. We still have a bit of an audience. They look like they're not wanting to come forward. Going once, going twice.
They're disengaging, sir.
With that, we'll close extended public comment at 8:50. That brings us to item 13, manager's comments. Mr. Stilldryer?
Thank you. I am planning on being out of the office next week. I'll be up north, want to let you know that. I mentioned the September 11th meeting already, but it was on my list. Our cleanup day is scheduled for September 28th, a Saturday. And it's going to be at the Commission on Aging again from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. The flyers are out in people's mailboxes, the residents' mailboxes. We always need volunteers, so whether it's any interested citizen or anybody sitting around this table, love to have you join us. Probably get a T-shirt out of the deal, maybe a donut.
There you go.
And I went over the calendar for the manager review and contract. There are boxes over here. They're from the Consumers Energy. They delivered 34 of them. They're energy efficient items in those boxes. Faucet aerators, water savers, there's like 4 of them in each box. There's power strips that are energy saver. There's several of those in each box. There's an exit sign in there. Not sure why, but anyways, we got 34 of them. And so we distributed them to the people that were at the Planning Commission earlier this month, the EDA that were earlier this month. And because we had 2 trustees that were at each one of those meetings, they've already received one of the boxes.
Oh,
There's
nice.
5 over there. So on your way out, you should take one.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
My college daughter will appreciate it.
The exit sign?
Appreciate that. I'll put that at the doorway.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 14, final board member comment. Trustee Brown.
With that being said, school's back in. Pay attention. It's these foggy mornings are coming, and just pay attention out there so we don't have any accidents. That's it.
Our
Watch
safety
our,
moment.
watch our kids.
Trustee Bills.
I want to hope the manager has a great time up north. That sounds like fun. And happy Labor Day, everybody. That's all I have.
Nothing.
Treasurer Rice.
Just a quick sorry for being late. My boys were doing martial arts training testing tonight, so was cheering them on, and then race come back. So, but thank you guys, and thanks for the stuff. And be safe, and yes, please watch for people and vehicles and follow the rules of the road, and even when you're walking. Yeah, I've seen too many accidents this week, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't
Just-
wear dark clothing when you're walking.
Right? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Trustee Therian.
I'm good, thanks.
I just have a question for our manager. Exit signs. Can the township use a bunch of those? Because when I got my box, I'm like, what am I going to do with this?
No.
No.
We have exit signs.
Everywhere.
We have a system in place. then I don't want to confuse the system.
Okay. Anybody have ideas where you can donate an exit sign? It has to be hardwired, so.
I move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Bill, support by Brown. No objections, I'm assuming. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 8:54 PM. Seriously, anybody know what?